"Cut her down," he said, soft as a nail driven into noon. Redwater had gathered to watch. Men leaned on rails, church ladies studied their gloves. A boy peered through a trough knot hole. Heat pressed the square. The day felt stingy with mercy. Eliza May Hartwell stood wired to a post, dress torn at the back, chin up like she meant to keep it there. Mayor Ellis Portman doffed his hat as if this were decent business. Sheriff Roy Cutter chewed a backtooth and looked anywhere but where a man ought to. Bart Kane stood neat as a ledger, arms folded. "Contract's clear," Bart said. "I paid her father's note. She's mine to take." The deputy raised the whip. First lick cracked. Eliza didn't scream. She set her breath steady as if she'd nailed it herself. "I'm not afraid," she said. Not loud, just true. Second lick. The deputy's eyes went to Portman. Portman gave that small nod men use when they're selling something that isn't theirs. Clip, clop. It came up Maine like a clock that wouldn't hurry. A rider eased from the glare, long coat open, dust on his boots, hat brim low. He sat tall in the saddle the way some men stand in court, straight, patient, asking no leave. The town went still when trouble met its size. He put his bay square between Eliza and the rest and looked only at her. "Name?" "Eliza May Hartwell." "Who says he owns you?" "Bart Kane," Portman answered for her. "By paper, lawful." The rider's hand fell easy to his hip. He didn't draw. "You sellin' women now?" 4 words hit like iron. A man in back swore. Another stepped away from Bart before he knew it. "My father died clean," Eliza said. "He never owed you a dime." The rider swung down. Boots hit dirt with a sound that carried. He stood close enough to smell carbolic and whiskey and fear. His shadow cut the post. "Cut her down," he said. Portman flushed. "Now see here, mister, this is—" "Cut her down." The deputy's wrist softened. The whip sagged. Cutter's hand tried the Colt and thought better. Around the square, the small sounds came back. The chain tick, a horse blowing. The rider reached up with his left and worked the wire careful so it wouldn't bite her twice. His right stayed near the holster, not on it. That's a kind of speaking most men understand. The wire gave. Eliza's arms fell. She did not. She set a palm to the post, found her feet, and met his eyes. "Ma'am," he said. "Sir," she said. He set his coat over her shoulders without touching the sore places. Then he turned to Portman and Cutter and the money that owned them. "We're done here." Cutter tried for his old authority and couldn't lay a finger on it. "Name yourself." "Ridge McCall. I run cows, fix windmills. I don't buy people." Bart's smile was the kind a coyote wears. "You'll answer for this." "Maybe," Ridge said, "but not to you." He tipped his hat to Eliza. She kept her chin. The crowd made a space because that's what a crowd does when it's ashamed and won't say so. Ridge led the bay toward the street. At the edge of the quiet, Sheriff Cutter slid his eyes to Bart Kane, and Bart slid his back to Cutter. A look that said the day wasn't over and the town would hear from them yet. They walked out of Redwater like 2 folks leaving a bad sermon. Ridge boosted Eliza with his left arm, careful as lifting a cracked jar. She caught the horn, settled side saddle so the torn cloth wouldn't bite. "Don't touch my back," she said. "No, ma'am." He swung up behind. Warbonnet felt the weight and moved. Boards, then dust, then the hard track that forgets you as soon as you pass. By the freight office, a scrap lay in a wheel rut. Edge singed, seal bubbled. Ridge snatched it and slipped it into his vest. Paper could wait. Pain could not. Cedar wash took them in. A stone pocket cupped a hatful of water. Ridge filled his hat. Sip, slow. She drank. He wet a bandana and, without touching skin, wiped blood from the saddle leather, working from the edge so the stain wouldn't spread. "You could have rode on," she said. "Could have. Didn't sit right." They turned onto the old mesquite track. 2 ruts and a promise. Ridge rolled his shoulder where wire had grazed him, then let it be. "Why'd you come back?" "'Cause out here silence kills faster than lead." They reached a low knoll. Ridge checked sky, ground, wind. He flattened the scrap. Half a line of figures, a blistered seal, a torn edge where a name ought to be. He folded it dry and tight. Was it a contract? Half of one. Looks like somebody meant the missing half to do all the talking. "My father died clean," she said. "He never owed Kane a dime." "I heard you," Ridge said. "We'll make the paper hear it too." 2 swallows from the canteen each, no fire. Jerky split in halves. "We push at dusk," Ridge said. "Keep the canyon at our elbow. If your arm gives, I can hold the lead rope." "It'll do," he said, passing her the rope anyway. "Trust is a tool. You keep it sharp by using it." They moved when the heat slid off the rock. Near dark, they topped a rise. On the far rim, 3 thin threads of smoke climbed straight up, spaced neat as fence posts. Not cook smoke, signal. "Friends of Mr. Kane," Ridge said. "How long?" "Closer than we want, sooner than we like." He checked the Colt he hadn't used and slid it home. "No chatter, no fire. We ghost the arroyo. If the wind shifts, we cut north." She drew the coat tight. "I'm holding." "I know." They slipped to hardpan where hoofprints don't brag. She didn't lean for comfort. She shared the same line of going forward. At a narrow bend, Warbonnet checked. "Spring seep," Ridge said, wetting the cloth and passing it back without looking. Her fingers found it. "What if they catch us?" "Then we make 'em prove every word, and we keep breathing while they try." "I'm not afraid." "I know, but I'm particular. We'll choose the ground." They rode till the ridges became darker pieces of dark. Ridge set them in a fold where a fallen cottonwood made a blind. He tied Warbonnet short and listened for the kind of silence that means men are moving somewhere you can't see. "Sleep if you can," he said. "Can you?" "No, ma'am." He gave her his rolled coat for under her cheek. When the wind turned, he smelled lamp smoke a long way off. He touched the scrap and felt its stiff edge against his ribs. "No sleep tonight," he told the horse, the woman, and the dark, and all 3 agreed by keeping quiet. They reached the way station near midnight. 1 lantern burned behind greasy glass, and the sign swung on 1 chain, so it read, Hob S. Ridge stopped short of the porch, listening. No dogs, no laughter, just the tick of boards cooling. Nate Hobbs eased the door, narrow face, tobacco breath, that thin smile men wear when they've been waiting for the wrong knock. "Evening, coffee's hot, stew if you can keep it, caught in back." Eliza swayed once and caught herself. Ridge nodded. "We'll take the cot and a basin." Inside smelled of lard and old dust. Hobbs clattered tin bowls like music could fix a thing. "Lucky for you," he said. "Doc Ada Merrill's stoppin' over, headin' south at first light." Doc Ada stepped from the back with sleeves rolled and eyes that measured without fuss. "Let me see, honey. No one touches your back but me." She washed, laid clean cloth in narrow rows, wrapped a broad band, hands steady as a wheelwright's. "You'll mend. Walk when you must. Sit when you can. No lard, no ash. You—" She pointed at Ridge's grays. "Leave that be." "Yes, ma'am," Ridge said. He ate 3 spoonfuls of stew he didn't taste. Something set wrong in his head and stayed. He went to the hearth. The ash lay piled neat, still warm under a thin crust, like a fire lit hard and killed too fast. On the sill sat a half-burnt match, sulfur whisper not gone yet. He eased the back door with 2 fingers. Over the roofline, a single thread of smoke climbed straight up into the still air, pencil thin, clerk neat, not cook smoke, signal. A side shed stood with its padlock hanging. Inside, a glass bell battery, a brass key, a small spool of fresh ink. The telegraph sat like a fed spider. The key was warm. On the ribbon the marks marched clean. BK, EP, BK, EP. Ridge went back slow. "Where's your wire go, Nate?" Hobbs blinked. "Wire ain't no—" Ridge had a fist on his shirt. Before the second lie stood up, Hobbs's heels skated on plank. "You sent for 'em," Ridge said. Hobbs's face folded. He looked at Eliza, then the floor. "He come by last week," he whispered. "Paid gold. Said tap when the girl showed. Said the man with her could ride on. I ain't bad, McCall. Just poor." "Poor's a kind," Ridge said. "Betrayal's another." He tapped Hobbs once, hard, clean, not cruel, and caught him before his head met iron, easing him into a chair. "Mercy can be rough, it's still mercy." Doc Ada tied off the last bandage. "If you aim to live, don't tarry. Riders inside the hour. Keep those dressings clean. Come see me on a cooler day," she told Eliza, softening at the edges. "We'll talk about anything but pain." "Yes, ma'am," Eliza said. Ridge gathered what mattered. Canteen, jerky, the scrap he'd taken in Redwater, the new ribbon with BK, EP. He slid both into his vest, where sweat wouldn't turn ink to tears. He looked at Hobbs. "You'll make this right." Hobbs nodded fast, shame crawling up his neck. "I'll tell a marshal. You'll stay put and be ready to swear it. That's what you'll do." He helped Eliza up, careful as lifting a cracked jar. "Don't touch my back," she said. "No, ma'am." Doc Ada walked them to the door, palm on the jamb like it, too, was a patient. "Hold your head level," she told Eliza. "Let the world come to you some." Outside, the night felt close as a hand. War Bonnet took the grade in 3 sure strides and slid into the dark. Ridge kept the canyon at his elbow, and the wind in his face so sound would carry forward, not back. A mile out, light flowered along the ridge and broke into many, torches, not stars. Then the noise stitched itself together, hoofbeats heavy and in time, a war drum rolling up the draw. Eliza's breath stayed even. "They're coming," she said. "They are," Ridge answered, checking the Colt he still hadn't needed. "We'll be somewhere else when they get here." They cut into a narrow wash, where hooves print light. Ridge looked once over his shoulder and saw the lantern at the way station blink twice and die. He thought of Hobbs slumped in that chair and of gold that buys men before it feeds them. "Ridge," Eliza said, voice small but steady, "did he sell you or me?" "He sold himself," Ridge said. "We'll let the law sort the rest." They rode without chatter. The dark carried their breath and gave nothing back. Behind them the drum kept time. Ahead, the wash bent toward a cut he trusted. Ridge touched the ribbon in his vest like a man counting nails before a long job. "Hold tight," he said. "I'm holding," she answered, and the words felt like a knot you could hang a day on. Ridge kept the canyon at his elbow until a dead spur crossed a dry cut on a gray trestle. Below lay one shallow pool and trouble. Hoofbeats rolled behind, closer now, meaner for having failed. He put War Bonnet on the boards. First shot came lazy, turned hungry. A post spat splinters. Second chewed a notch. Ridge rode past center and swung down, pulling Eliza behind a stack of ties. "Breathe steady." Through a gap he counted 2 riders, one showboat high, one low and careful. A slug kissed Ridge's shoulder and left a hot stripe. "Flask, left saddlebag." She ripped his kerchief, poured whiskey till the cloth bit, pressed hard. Her hands shook once, then learned the work. "Why'd you come back?" "Out here, silence kills faster than lead." She tied off. "Then let's make noise that matters." Showboat spurred onto the span, firing wild. Ridge shot a plank astride ahead of the horse. Wood shattered. The pony checked. The rider pinwheeled into dust. The mount trotted off, none the wiser. Ridge slid along the cribbing, hunting the low rider who'd started around to flank the arroyo. He dropped from the bridge, crossed at the rocks, and met him at the mouth. 2 shots traded. The outlaw's hat leapt. His nerve went with it. He ran for the ridge, leaving a torn cinch strap snagged in mesquite. The leather bore a burn, a wheel and spur over HWS with a side strike cane freight. Road and riders both bought, Ridge said. Will it help? Eliza asked. In front of a badge. He tucked it with the half paper and the ribbon. 3 more tested the bank. Ridge set Eliza on a knee-high shelf and kept the Colt across his knee. If they rush, sight low, hands, guns, rigging. Not hearts, she finished. A bold one tried the cart track along the rim. Ridge took the hub pin. The rig crabbed and lay down. Men swore and found cover. After that, they were patients, which doesn't last long. Ridge whistled Warbonnet in, boosted Eliza without touching her back, and crossed the far end fast. They slid into the arroyo, hugged the damp edge so hooves wouldn't print dark, then climbed a cattle path that remembered better years. Shots followed, then thinned. Pride cools slower than lead. By noon, a patch of cottonwoods threw a box of shade. Beyond lay a few houses, a forge, a brush chapel, cedar moon. Faces looked up, then away. They'd saved breath for when it mattered. From the forge stepped Jonah Red Elk, coal on his arms, old mileage in his eyes. He took them in, coat over bandage, slinged shoulder, people measured and unwilling to shrink. You bringin' weather again, Ridge? Wind found us first. Doc Ada's inside, Jonah said. Alma's got linens. Set down a spell. Eliza's jaw held, but her knees thought of quitting. Ridge caught her elbow. Easy. I'm steady, she said, just finished with falling. Jonah looked toward the ridge where dust lay thin as threat. They'll come behind, counting themselves brave. They'll count wrong, Ridge said. He tapped his vest. Next part's law. Good, Jonah said. Cedar Moon keeps 2 kinds of quiet, healing and holding. Tell me which bell to ring. Eliza watched a girl chase a chicken and miss. If they come with rope, she said, I'll meet the hand, not the heart. Jonah nodded, foreman sure. Back on the trestle, a plank settled with a tick. Ridge felt the day choose sides. We'll need water, powder, and a witness who keeps notes straight. Alma and Millie, Jonah said. You're in the right town. Then let's get to it, Ridge said. The forge smoke hung light as Jonah Red Elk waved them through the alley to Doc Ada's small room. Ridge eased Eliza down, shoulder throbbing under the cloth she'd tied. Doc Ada was brisk, no fuss, cutting away bandage and pouring carbolic. Ridge winced but stayed still. You keep catching lead like it's harvest, Ada said. Just passing it back, Ridge answered. Eliza sat stiff, ribbon tucked in her palm. She hadn't asked for water, hadn't asked for rest. Only when Ada turned to her did the scars show clear, welted across her shoulders, rope burns raw at her wrists. Ada touched careful, then looked Ridge in the eye. This wasn't punishment, it was branding. Jonah leaned in the doorframe, arms folded. Bart Kane's hand shows through even when he doesn't. From outside came Widow Alma Kearney's voice. They'll be riding through by sundown. Portman's writ in his coat, Sheriff Cutter at his elbow. They'll want her back, debt in hand. Ridge rose, buttoning his vest one-handed. Debt don't buy people. Jonah's mouth bent wry. Say that to the men holding the rope. Eliza's voice broke the room's weight. They can take my breath, not my word. I won't beg them. Ridge studied her, barely 20, but carrying more than most men twice her years. Then we stand, he said. By dusk, Cedar Moon's one street filled with a hush. Men leaned on rails, women pulled children inside. A bell at the chapel door swung once, no hand on it. Millie Doolan's signal from the telegraph. The riders came, Bart Kane on a black gelding, Mayor Portman puffed in a cream coat. Sheriff Cutter sour behind. Deputy Driggs flanked with papers folded neat. Portman spoke first. Town law holds. Debt signed, property returned. He tapped the page. Ridge didn't touch his gun. She ain't property, not in this town, not anywhere worth breathing. Bart Kane's grin was slow. Funny, McCall. You fix windmills and haul freight, now you preach law, hand her over. She belongs on my payroll till the ink's paid. Jonah shifted, the hammer he'd carried from the forge bright in his hand. Payroll don't reach this ground. Eliza stepped forward, voice steady. You'll not trade my name on a ledger, I'm not afraid of your rope. She met Kane's stare till he looked aside. The crowd murmured, quiet, rising, strong as river under ice. Sheriff Cutter cleared his throat. Best not stir the town, Ridge. His hand brushed his belt but didn't close on iron. Ridge's tone stayed low. Then do your badge proud. Tear up that writ. Driggs spat, unfolding the sheet. This is law. He lifted it high, but a gust tore it loose. Millie's quick hand caught it. She read aloud. Ode to Kane Freight. Signed Eliza May Hartwell. Mark witnessed by Ellis Portman. Then she looked up. Except Eliza was underage the year it's dated. This writ's nothing but paper. The crowd shifted closer. Widow Alma called, We keep records at the boarding house, she's right. Bart's smile curdled. Records don't stop a man from taking what's his. Ridge stepped closer, hand near his Colt but not drawing. Try it. First nail you drive here, I'll pull it out. Silence stretched. The riders knew numbers meant little with townsfolk watching. Kane jerked his reins. This isn't finished. He wheeled, dust swallowing him. Portman followed, pale under his hat. Cutter lingered, eyes meeting Ridge's, then turned his horse without a word. When they were gone, the street let out its breath. Jonah set his hammer down. Millie folded the fake writ and tucked it inside her blouse. Alma gathered women to Eliza's side, laying shawls on her shoulders. Ridge touched his bandaged arm, gaze on the fading dust. They'll come harder. Eliza nodded. Then I'll stand harder. I'm not afraid. Jonah clapped Ridge's good shoulder. Next time we'll have proof in hand before they ride in. Ridge looked toward the telegraph office where Millie's key already tapped. Marshal Hale will have word by dawn. The town settled, but beneath the quiet lay a steel thread. Cedar Moon had chosen its side, and it would not bend easy. They returned at dusk, not loud, mean. Bart Kane brought 10 riders, Sheriff Cutter and Deputy Driggs, with a sheet raised high. Alma's bell rope hung still. Ridge stood by the livery porch. Jonah Red Elk leaned to a post, hammer in hand. Eliza sat the bench with the Winchester across her lap. Millie's martial slip hid under Alma's shawl. Driggs swung down. Town writ, hand her over. Ridge didn't touch iron. You tried that tune at noon, Portman puffed. This copy is attested. Millie stepped to the doorway. Clerk signs with his right. That scrawl isn't his, and the U.S. Marshal answered my wire. Bart smiled without humor. You think a telegraph outranks debt? Eliza stood. A human outranks your ledger. Cutter shifted. Bart's eyes clipped to him. Enough sermon, Bart said. We take her now. Ridge set the rule. Nobody fires first. 2 rings and women, kids to dugouts. If a man grabs a child or pulls a rope, we break him. Otherwise, this yard stays quiet. Driggs sneered. You giving orders to sworn law? Jonah lifted the hammer. This ain't Redwater. An abused woman under color of paper sits under federal shelter. Argue it in Sun Mesa. The line folded, 2 by the chapel, 3 at the forge, the rest along the rail. Bell 1, Jonah said. Millie tugged once. Women slid the little ones to dugouts. Doc Ada counted heads and shut doors. Bart rode up till his gelding's breath fogged Ridge's buttons. "Last chance, windmill man." Ridge looked up. "You're borrowing courage from other people's rifles. Return it." Driggs tried again. "Cutter, serve it." The sheriff stared at the page, then at Eliza, then at the kids going into Earth. "This is bad law," he said. He didn't move. Bart turned to his hulking roper. "Show 'em why paper's kinder." The man swung down, coiled rope, and walked to Alma's beam over the livery door. He threw. The loop caught. He drew the knot tight. With his other hand he seized a barefoot girl, Maria, hauled her in front of him, chest to her small back. Eliza rose, rifle low. Ridge clipped the air. "Hold, rule stands." The roper smiled and reached for a short Colt with his left. "Town runs on fear, not rules." He jerked the rope higher so the noose kissed air, and the crowd tasted what he meant to do. Jonah took a half step. "Let her go." "Make me," the man said. Bart raised a gloved hand. "You see, the rope listens better than law." Ridge answered so all could hear. "First hand that hauls that knot or draws on a child, he's the one we answer, not a breath sooner." The bell gave a second hard ring. Women vanished into clay. Millie moved the last boy, then stood by the jam. Doc Ada planted herself between dugout doors and yard. The roper dragged Maria closer and curled his thumb on the hammer. "Don't," Eliza said. He bared his teeth. "Back away from the girl," Ridge told him. "Or what?" "Or you learn what quiet folks do when you mistake silence for fear." Cutter's voice came raw. "Bart, call him off." Bart didn't. He edged aside for a cleaner view. The roper's thumb clicked the first notch. The noose swung. The girl froze. Every heart in the yard took the same tight breath. "2 rings," Jonah said. "God help the first man who thinks we're bluffing." Eliza's cheek settled to the stock. Ridge's hand hovered, open, over his gun, keeping the rule by the hair if he had to. Then the yard went so quiet you could hear dust settle. That's where the story holds its breath, right before a man learns which kind of silence he's been listening to. The rope swayed above the livery door, Maria's small chest rising fast under the roper's grip. Bart Kane sat his saddle, eyes narrow, waiting for fear to crack the standoff. The riders flanked him, rifles easy in their hands. Eliza's breath slowed. Ridge caught the shift in her shoulders. He gave one slight shake of the head. "Wait." But her knuckles whitened on the stock. The man's thumb eased another notch on the hammer. One twitch more and the girl would swing. Eliza's voice came low but steady. "I told you, I'm not afraid." The roper sneered. "Then watch." He jerked Maria forward, rope straining. The rifle barked. Flame licked the dusk. The roper's pistol spun out of his hand, fingers split and bleeding. Maria tumbled free, Jonah catching her against his chest. For a long second, no one moved. The shot's echo rolled off the church wall and back again. Eliza lowered the barrel but kept her eye on Bart. "Your rope won't speak for you anymore." Bart's gelding shifted, uneasy under the weight of silence. Driggs spat dust. "Sheriff, arrest her. She just fired in cold blood." Cutter's jaw worked. He looked at the child clinging to Jonah, then at the ruined hand of the roper groaning in the dirt. "That wasn't cold blood," Cutter said. "That was a mother saving a child." The line broke. Townsfolk who had been pressed back now edged forward, their fear bending into something harder. Women held lanterns high. Men clutched fence rails like clubs. Ridge finally drew steel, slow and clean. He leveled it, not at Bart, but at the false writ still in Driggs's hand. One shot, and the page shredded in the deputy's fist. "That paper's dead," Ridge said. "What's left is law, and you don't carry it." Bart snarled. "This isn't over. You've crossed me in front of the town." Eliza stepped down off the porch, boots steady in the dust. She stood beside Ridge, her rifle resting easy now, voice calm as rain after thunder. "Then maybe it's the town's turn to cross you." Behind them, the bell gave one soft ring, Alma's hand. A signal. Children safe. Doors barred. Bart reined back, fury fighting reason. His men shifted in their saddles, eyes darting at the crowd closing ranks. For the first time, numbers weren't on his side. He spat into the dust. "Enjoy your victory. It'll cost you blood before the week's out." He wheeled his horse. The riders followed, dragging the wounded roper behind. When they were gone, the yard exhaled. Jonah handed Maria to Doc Ada. Millie pressed a trembling hand over the telegraph slip under her shawl. Cutter holstered his gun with a shake of his head. Ridge looked at Eliza. She met his eye without flinching. He said quietly, "You just wrote yourself into this fight." She answered, "Then I'll see it through." The night came down on Redwater, but it wasn't the same town anymore. A line had been drawn, and for once, silence had fired back. The telegraph shack leaned against the freight office like a tired mule. Its lamp burned low, glass chimneys smudged. Millie Doolin had kept her head down all evening, tapping out routine cattle tallies, but when Ridge and Eliza stepped inside, she slid a folded slip across the counter. "Came through an hour ago," she whispered. "Signed BKFPDR." Ridge frowned. Bart Kane, Ellis Portman, Walt Driggs. 3 letters, 3 men. The town's throat held shut. The message was short, but its weight pressed hard. Contract held, transfer at dawn, remove witnesses if needed. Eliza studied the scrawl. "That's us," she said. "They mean me." Millie nodded. "I saved the carbon. If they burn the line, I'll still have proof." Ridge reached for his coat pocket, pulling free the half-burned contract he had pried from Bart's hired hand 2 nights past at the way station. The edges still smelled of smoke, but the wording inside was plain. Debt transfer, collateral in flesh. Signed by Mayor Portman, witnessed by Deputy Driggs. He laid the brittle paper beside Millie's slip. The names matched. The ink carried the same flourishes, even the crooked loop in Portman's P. Eliza's face hardened. "That's enough to show a marshal." Ridge leaned closer, voice low. "It might be enough to hang 3 men if we can live to put it in front of one." Jonah Red Elk came through the door, shoulders dusted white from the cedar wash. "Riders are moving," he said. "Bart's camp split. Some circle north, some east. They're tightening rope around this town." Cutter stood in the doorway behind him, hat in hand. His badge caught the lamplight like it was ashamed to shine. "If you aim to send word to a marshal, you'd best do it quick. Bart'll kill the wire before midnight." Millie straightened, fingers already setting on the key. "I can reach Marshal Ezra Hale in Sun Mesa if the line holds. He's the only one won't fold under Bart's gold." Ridge nodded. "Send it. Names, contract, threat of blood. Make it plain." The clack of the key filled the shack, sharp and certain. Every tap felt like a nail driven into Bart Kane's coffin. Eliza held her rifle near, eyes on the window, while Jonah checked the street for shadows. When Millie finished, she slid the paper toward Ridge. "Copy's yours. Hale'll ride if he believes." Eliza touched the slip with care. "He'll believe, because it's the truth." Outside, the wind carried dust across the boardwalk. Lamps in the saloon guttered low. The town of Redwater seemed to know its soul was on trial. Ridge folded the contract and wire together, tucking them deep inside his vest. "We've stirred the fire," he said. "Now we wait for the law, or the devil, to walk through first." The telegraph clicked once more, faint but clear. A reply. Millie's eyes widened. "Marshal Hale says, hold. Witness safe. Riding before dawn." Silence swept the room. Eliza's breath eased just a little. Ridge looked at her, steady as stone. "We've got 1 shot to hold the line till he gets here." And outside, as if to answer, a distant horse whinnied against the night. Alma Kearney's boarding house sat at the bend of Redwater's main street, wide porch sagging but sturdy. By dusk, the place turned into a lantern-lit island. Ridge chose it not for comfort, but because Alma was the one woman in town Bart Kane had never bought. Her porch, folks whispered, was the only ground left neutral. They gathered there under the creak of her old rocking chair. Alma herself stood in the doorway, apron folded, eyes sharp. "You boys better keep your hands holstered. This is my porch, and my porch is law tonight." Ridge set Eliza on the bench closest to the steps. Jonah Red Elk leaned against a post, arms crossed, his silence heavy as a hammer. Sheriff Cutter showed up late, hat pulled low, a shadow of shame on his jaw. He didn't sit, just hovered, badge dull in the lamplight. Ridge held up the charred contract, edges flaking. "This paper says Mayor Portman signed over a debt in human flesh, witnessed by Deputy Driggs, ordered by Bart Kane." He laid it flat on the table Alma dragged from inside. Then he dropped Millie's carbon slip beside it. "And here's the wire that proves it wasn't a mistake. It was a plan." Eliza spoke then, voice clear despite the bruise still purple on her cheek. "They told me silence was my only choice. Tonight I choose to speak." The crowd that had drifted in from the street shifted uneasily. Farmers, rail hands, mothers with aprons still dusted in flour. All had seen the lash cut her back in Redwater's square. All had said nothing. Their silence sat heavier than the night air. Bart Kane didn't bother with shame. He strode onto the porch with two men at his heels, boots loud, hand resting on his gun like it was just another piece of jewelry. "That contract is mine. Debt's mine. Town runs on order, and I gave it." Alma snapped back, broom handle in hand. "Order? You mean fear. Don't spit on my boards, Bart." Ridge didn't rise, didn't flinch. "You sell cattle, Bart, not people. You call that order. I call it rot." Sheriff Cutter finally spoke, voice rough. "You forced my hand too long. I ain't blind no more." He pulled his badge from his vest and set it on Alma's table. "If law don't stand here, then I'll stand as a man, not a coward." A murmur rolled through the crowd. One by one, neighbors stepped closer to the porch, until Bart found himself ringed not by his men, but by townsfolk who had bent too long. Eliza rose slowly, gripping the post for balance. "You told me I'd be forgotten. Tonight I am remembered." Bart sneered. "Words won't stop a bullet." His fingers twitched toward his Colt. Ridge's hand rested near his own holster, calm, not rushed, but he didn't need to draw. Jonah shifted just enough, his shadow falling across Bart's boots, and the crowd closed in tighter. Alma slammed her broomstick to the planks. "Not here, not on this porch. You want blood, take it somewhere else. Tonight we hold trial in daylight, even if the sun's gone." Bart's jaw worked, but his hand left the Colt. For the first time he looked less certain. Ridge leaned forward. "We've got a marshal riding in, evidence sealed, witness alive. Your time's measured now, Bart, tick by tick." The porch held its breath, and then, as if the town exhaled together, a woman in the crowd whispered, "About damn time." Others nodded, and the balance shifted like a tide breaking free. Bart backed a step, fury burning but no shot fired. Alma's lantern swung, casting light over the papers on her table. Truth, fragile but unbroken, glowed there. Ridge looked to Eliza, then to the crowd. "This porch ain't the courthouse, but it's the first step." And so Redwater's night held, between fear and law, between one man's greed and a town's awakening. The night after Alma's porch trial, Redwater breathed uneasy. Folks pretended life was steady, lanterns lit, stoves burning, but behind every door the talk was the same. Bart Kane wouldn't let humiliation stand. Ridge knew it too. He saddled up before dawn, horse hooves muffled in the red dirt, as he and Jonah Red Elk rode toward the gullies south of town. Sheriff Cutter, stripped of his badge but not his grit, followed 100 yards back. Eliza stayed behind at Alma's, yet her voice lingered in Ridge's head. You stood when no one else would. Don't let him corner you. He carried those words like a second revolver. Dry Wash was no place for cattle or men. It wound through the desert like a scar, walls high and jagged, shadows thick as tar. Ridge guessed Bart would strike there. Narrow ground, no law but iron. By mid-morning, dust rose ahead. Jonah raised a hand. 3 riders crouched on the rim, rifles glinting. Ridge felt the trap snap shut. Driggs is with 'em, Cutter muttered, eyes narrowed. I'd know that slouch anywhere. Deputy Driggs, the man who signed the false writ, rode down first, face pale but mean. Ridge McCall, he drawled, you're trespassing on Kane's claim. Hand over the girl's testimony and the scraps you call evidence. Walk away alive. Ridge's laugh was dry. That porch trial rattled you, Driggs. Evidence already spoke louder than your lies. A shot cracked from above, splintering rock by Ridge's boot. Jonah slid from his horse in one motion, bow strung, arrow notched. His voice was low thunder. Next man raises steel. I cut him from the world. Driggs flinched, but Bart Kane himself rode out then, broad shoulders filling the wash. His stallion snorted like smoke. Bart's voice carried, You made a fool of me, McCall. Tonight the desert swallows you whole. Ridge's hand hovered near his Colt. You had your chance in town, Kane. You wanted darkness. Well, here it is. The wash erupted. Shots bounced off stone, echoing like a dozen guns. Ridge dove behind a boulder, firing steady, no waste. Cutter's old Winchester spoke twice, each round deliberate, each man dropped clean. Jonah's arrow pinned a rifleman's arm to the rock, scream cutting short when Jonah's second shaft found him. Dust choked the air. Bart spurred forward, closing distance, Colt in hand. Ridge rolled from cover, met him eye to eye. The 2 men's muzzles rose together. Then Bart's horse reared, shrieking as a stray bullet grazed its flank. Bart toppled, crashing hard into the wash floor. His gun clattered free. Cutter rushed in, pressing the barrel of his Winchester against Driggs's chest. You wrote that writ, he spat, breath ragged. You'll answer under oath this time. Driggs's hands shot skyward. It wasn't my idea. Portman ordered it. Bart paid for it. The words spilled before he could choke them back. Jonah grabbed him, twisting his arm until the lie was bled out in full. Bart staggered to his feet, blood streaking his temple. He lunged for the fallen Colt, but Ridge's boot found it first, pinning steel to sand. Ridge's voice cut sharp. Game's over, Kane. You ain't afraid of law? Then face it in daylight. For a heartbeat, Bart looked ready to die in the dust. But the sight of townsfolk shadows gathering on the ridge above, the very neighbors who'd followed from Redwater, broke him. The trap he laid had closed on himself. Ridge holstered his Colt slow, never breaking his gaze. Bind him, he told Cutter. We ride to Sun Mesa with proof enough to bury the whole rot. As Jonah tied Driggs and Bart, the wash grew quiet, only the desert wind whispering through stone. Ridge stood still, chest heaving, eyes on the far horizon. This was no victory, it was a wait, but Eliza's words came back again. Don't let him corner you. He hadn't. Not today. The ride from Dry Wash to Box Canyon felt longer than miles. Ridge McCall pushed his horse hard, dust trailing thin ribbons in the desert light. Bart Kane and Driggs were bound, roped to their saddles like sacks of grain, but Ridge knew the game wasn't over. Kane had networks like mesquite roots, deep, hidden, hard to kill. Jonah Red Elk rode at his flank, silent as always, but watchful. Sheriff Cutter kept a close eye on Driggs. Winchester laid across his lap. Behind them came 2 townsfolk who dared to follow after the gunfire. Men who'd stayed silent too long and finally found a sliver of backbone. Ridge figured their presence might matter in court more than any bullet fired. By midday, the sandstone walls of Box Canyon rose ahead, sheer and red like a wound in the earth. The canyon had one way in and one way out. Freight wagons sometimes used it as a shortcut toward Sun Mesa, but Ridge smelled the trap before they entered. "Bart's got men hidden there," he muttered. Jonah nodded. "Birds quiet, rock too still." Cutter cursed under his breath. "Hell, Ridge, we walk in, we'll be boxed like quail." "Then we flush the covey first," Ridge said. They tied Bart and Driggs under a ledge, guarded by Cutter, while Ridge and Jonah scouted ahead. The canyon twisted like a snake, shadows sharp. At the bend, Ridge spotted it, a freight wagon, tarp half covering crates, and there, just barely peeking, the corner of a leather ledger. He signaled Jonah. "Ledger's in that wagon. That's the heart of it, the names, the payoffs, every lie bought in ink." Jonah's eyes narrowed, and the teeth waiting to bite. As if on cue, rifle fire cracked from the cliffs. Shards of rock spit across Ridge's cheek. He hit the ground, rolling behind a boulder. Jonah loosed an arrow, the shaft whistling up into stone, drawing a cry as a gunman toppled. "Stay low," Ridge barked, crawling toward the wagon. Bullets ricocheted around him, the air hot with dust and lead. He reached the wheel, slapped the brake loose, and shoved. The wagon lurched forward, rolling downhill, drawing fire with it. Jonah sprinted along the opposite wall, covering him. "Go!" he yelled. Ridge scrambled onto the wagon bed as it rattled down. He yanked the tarp clear, snatched the ledger, and hugged it to his chest, just as a slug punched through the wood inches from his hand. He jumped, hit the ground hard, rolled, and came up running. Behind him, the wagon slammed into a boulder, crates bursting open, gold dust scattered like sparks in the sun. For a moment, even Bart's hidden men froze at the sight. That heartbeat was all Ridge needed. He fired twice, dropping one, then ducked back into cover. By the time Cutter and the townsfolk stormed up the trail, the canyon was a haze of smoke and echoes. The ambushers melted, dragging their wounded, leaving only the dust of their retreat. Ridge staggered out, ledger clutched tight, blood trickling from a graze on his arm. Bart Kane, still tied under the ledge, sneered when Ridge shoved the book in front of him. "Ink won't hang me. Men fear me more than they fear law." Ridge's jaw clenched. "Not anymore. This ledger says who you paid, what you stole, and who you buried. Sun Mesa judge'll see every line." Bart's sneer faltered when townsfolk pressed closer, eyes on him, not Ridge. His power cracked like a dry branch, once loud, now brittle. Ridge strapped the ledger to his saddle horn. "We ride to Sun Mesa at dawn. And Kane, you'll walk that courthouse floor in irons. No shadows left to hide in." The canyon lay quiet again, save for the rustle of wind across stone. Ridge looked at Jonah, then Cutter. They all knew. The fight wasn't just bullets. It was paper, names, proof. For once, law had teeth sharper than iron. Ridge mounted up, ledger secure. He looked down the long road east. "Come on," he said, voice low but steady. Day of laws waiting. The road east cut flat and hard. Ridge McCall rode at the head, his saddle weighted not by iron but by the ledger strapped to the horn. Jonah Red Elk kept close, scanning every rise, every shadow. Sheriff Cutter pushed the column forward, Bart Kane shackled between two townsmen who'd found their courage too late, but found it still. By afternoon, the white adobe walls of Sun Mesa rose from the desert, courthouse tower stark against the sky. Folks spilled into the square, farmers, miners, merchants, drawn by rumor faster than telegraph. Word had spread. Bart Kane, untouchable for 20 years, was riding in tide like any rustler. Ridge swung down from his horse, dust on his boots, and carried the ledger under his arm as if it were a rifle. The courthouse doors loomed wide. guarded by 2 deputies from Sun Mesa, men not bought by Cain. Cutter handed Bart off, iron chains clanking loud enough for every man, woman, and child to hear. Inside, Judge Ezra Hale waited, an older man with white whiskers, shoulders bent but eyes sharp as flint. He sat high behind the bench, gavel in hand. "Bring the prisoners forward." Bart held his sneer, though sweat traced his temple. "This is theater," he barked. "A debt contract, nothing more. You can't hang me for paper." Ridge stepped into the well of the court, laid the ledger down on the judge's desk. "It ain't just paper, Judge. It's names, payoffs, false deeds, dates that match missing folks. He bought this town one lie at a time." The room went silent but for the creak of benches. Hale thumbed the cracked leather cover, eyes scanning pages, quick but sure. Each line weighed more than a bullet. "Sheriff Cutter," Hale said, voice steady, "you swear this evidence was taken clean?" Cutter nodded. "Taken from Cain's own freight wagon at Box Canyon. Witnessed by 2 townsmen, Jonah Red Elk and myself. Ridge McCall risked his hide to bring it here." Hale's gavel cracked once. "Then it stands." He looked over his spectacles at Cain. "And it damns you." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Bart's bluster faltered. The chains at his wrists seemed heavier. Then Hale turned, eyes sweeping the room. "This court issues warrants on every name in this ledger, from banker Portman to Deputy Driggs, from cattle brands forged to freight shipments laundered. The days of shadow are over." A murmur grew, low and rising, as townsfolk realized who among them had fed at Cain's trough. Fear shifted like a wind. Some men slunk low in their seats. Others stiffened, knowing their day was coming. Bart snarled, "You think paper and ink will hold against iron and men's hunger? They'll come for you, Judge. They'll come for him." He jerked his chin toward Ridge. Ridge met his gaze, calm as stone. "Let 'em come. This time the whole town's watchin'." Outside, the courthouse bell rang. 3 slow tolls calling every ear in Sun Mesa. It wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was a reckoning. Jonah leaned close to Ridge as they stepped back. "You cut the root, tree still fights to live." Ridge nodded. "Then we keep swinging till it falls." His eyes fixed on the horizon through the tall courthouse windows. Somewhere out there, men still loyal to Cain would be stirring. But for the first time, law had the stronger ground. Judge Hale's gavel fell a final time. Court convenes again at dawn, prisoners held under territorial custody, ledger sealed as evidence of record. May the law of this territory stand. The crowd poured into the street, buzzing like a hive split open. Some shouted approval, some whispered fear, but all eyes, for once, were on justice. Ridge stepped into the square, ledger safe behind locked doors now, and for the first time in years, felt the weight in his chest ease just a fraction. The fight wasn't over, but today the tide had turned. The sun bled red along the rim of dry willow when the dust cloud rose. Ridge McCall tightened his reins, eyes narrowing. Jonah Red Elk rode to his flank, quiet as ever. Sheriff Cutter brought the rear guard of townsmen, rifles braced across their saddles. Bart Cain had been hauled this far under lock, but the man's reach stretched longer than chains. Everyone knew it. They entered the wash where canyon walls pressed close, shadows deepening with the fall of day. Ridge's gut knotted. He felt the stillness too clean, like a stage waiting for its actors. Then the shot came, ricocheting off stone, spitting dust by his stirrup. "Ambush!" Cutter shouted. Men poured from the rocks above. Cain's riders, faces covered in scarves, guns barking. Horses screamed, iron shoes skittering on loose gravel. Ridge shoved Eliza behind a boulder, his Colt out before thought caught breath. Jonah's Winchester cracked clean, one rider pitching from his saddle. "Get the prisoner down!" Cutter roared. Two men dragged Bart off his horse, shoving him to the ground, chains still tight. Bart only laughed, eyes lit with that old fire. "Told you, McCall, ink and gavel don't beat iron and hunger." Ridge ducked as chips of stone burst over his shoulder. He sighted, fired, saw a bandit topple from the rim. "Stay low," he growled to Eliza. She pressed flat, lips tight, her face pale but steady. The fight snarled hard. Shots cracked, smoke curled bitter in the canyon air. Townsmen who'd never fired in anger found themselves behind rock, shaking but pulling triggers. Jonah moved like shadow, every shot measured. Cutter's voice cut through the din, steady, pulling men back from panic. Still the outlaws pressed. They wanted Bart free, and if blood was the price, they'd pay. Ridge caught Bart's grin in the firelight of muzzle flash. The man thrived in chaos, even chained. "Cut me loose, McCall," Bart shouted. "You and me, we'll run this land together. No judge, no law, just power." Ridge leveled his Colt, eyes cold. "Your time's done, Kane. Chains suit you." Another wave came down the slope, pistols flaring. One townsman fell with a cry. Rage surged through Ridge's veins, not hot but hard, like steel drawn in the forge. He fired, reloaded, fired again, moving forward instead of back. Jonah's rifle cracked beside him. Cutter's deputies pushed from cover, the tide slowly breaking. The last rider faltered, his horse bolting down the wash. Silence slammed down sudden as a church door. Only echo and the moans of the wounded remained. Smoke drifted thin under the bleeding sky. Ridge turned. Bart was still there, sprawled in dust, wrists bound. His grin had faded, replaced by the first sliver of doubt. Sheriff Cutter stepped forward, badge glinting. He hauled Bart to his feet, voice carrying for all men to hear. "Bartholomew Kane, you stand under arrest by territorial warrant under law of Sun Mesa and the United States. You'll answer to the court, not the gun." The clang of cuffs snapped sharp as iron truth. For the first time in years, Bart Kane's hands were bound by more than backroom deals and hired killers. He spit once, but the sound was hollow. The men around, the farmers, smiths, clerks, looked on with something between awe and relief. The outlaw lord of Redwater had fallen not by bullet alone, but by the ledger, the law, and the grit of those who chose to stand. Ridge slid his Colt back into leather. Eliza rose from the boulder, eyes shining not with tears, but with something steadier, belief that silence didn't have to win. As the last light died, Cutter gave the order. "Back to Sun Mesa. At dawn, Judge Hale will finish what we've started." The column reformed, weary but unbroken. Bart Kane rode shackled in the center, no longer master of the trail. Ridge swung into the saddle beside Eliza, meeting her gaze once more. "It ain't over," he said low. "No," she answered, "but it's turned." And with that, they rode west into the coming night, the law carrying more weight than fear. Dry Willow was 3 rooms, a lean-to, a windmill that squeaked every 8th turn. Ridge set a last fence post and listened. No trouble, just work being itself. Eliza stood at the threshold, sleeves rolled, hair tied with Alma's blue ribbon. The scars had gone from angry to stubborn. Doc Ada called that real healing, quitting the hiding. Ada came with her bag. She pressed Eliza's shoulder, checked the linen. "You knit straight," she said. "Walk at sunup, rest at noon. Answer pain only when it tells the truth." "Some nights it lies," Eliza said. "Then send it outside. Lock the door." Widow Alma brought cornbread and a jar of apple, smacked Ridge's knuckles when he reached early. "Let it settle," she said, like new law. Jonah Red Elk turned the shed into a small forge. 3 youngsters learned to pull heat and strike true. "Edge, not face," he said. "Metal remembers." A small boy missed, then didn't. "Better," Jonah said. The law hammered slower but sure. In Sun Mesa, Judge Hale read the ledger line by line. Portman pled confusion. Driggs wept and wrote names. Bart Kane stood tall until the cuffs went back on. Verdicts take time. Ridge rode in twice a week to sign where Hale pointed. Each return, Eliza counted his breaths, walked him to the porch, waited till the air steadied. "You're carrying weight that isn't yours," she said. "Set it down here." He did, a little each time. They fenced a chicken run, patched the roof, tuned the windmill till the squeak found a friendlier note. On Sundays, with no preacher, Ridge read from the Sears catalog like scripture, and Eliza laughed with both eyes. One evening she set her palm on the doorframe. "I still hear it sometimes," she said. "The whip. It tries the latch." Ridge covered her hand. "I hear the pump louder," he said. "That's how we live." "Ever wish we'd never ridden into Redwater?" "No," he said. "I wish the town had stood sooner." Eliza looked over the small square of ground, gate, trough, door. "Kids ought to play here," she said. "Learn the good kind of quiet." "They will," Ridge said. "We'll teach it with work." Weeks slid into their places. First rain, first calf. Eliza learned to throw a loop without hurting herself. Ridge learned to say please when the coffee fought back. The yard stayed busy, no chair for fear. A letter came under Marshal Hale's hand. Kane to territorial prison, Portman removed, Driggs to testify against himself for shorter chain. One line wasn't law. A town stands when a few stand first. Eliza let out a breath she'd kept too long. The world looked the same, only truer. "I'm not afraid," she said, not to argue, just to keep a promise. They hung a small bell by the door, not warning but welcome. Cutter, wearing a deputy's star under Hale's eye, came twice with an apology he couldn't form. Ridge didn't make him. A man sets down shame in his own time. At dusk the wind quit. The pump clicked once and rested. Eliza listened to the yard finish, chickens settling, Jonah's anvil cooling, Alma humming a half hymn. She spoke to the air, which is to say, the past. "I'm here," she said, "and I'm staying." A laugh rose out of her and ran down the wash, light on its feet. Not a dare, not defiance, just the sound of somebody who survived and chose to live. Pain had built a spine. Law kept it standing, and if another square ever filled, and a third lash hung in the air, the question would come round again, plain as thirst. Where will you stand? When the dust of a story like this finally settles, what lingers isn't the gun smoke or the weight of old scars. It's the quiet strength of folks who chose to stand when silence would have been easier. Ridge and Eliza remind us that healing doesn't always come with fanfare. It comes in steady work, small kindness, and the courage to keep the door open even after hurt tried to close it. If this tale spoke to you, I'd be grateful to hear your thoughts. Even a simple one in the comments lets me know you're still riding along with these Western stories. And if you'd like to keep walking with us down these dusty trails, go ahead and subscribe. There are more journeys waiting just beyond the next ridge, because out here in the wide silence of the West, every voice matters.